Hey, what's good? Welcome to Talk Politics, your weekly stream, starting every 8:30 on Wednesday night. How is it going for y'all? Seems like it's a little bit laggy here on our end. Please forgive us for that, but we'll continue to work through that. And we look forward to having you join the show. If you are a part of the show, make sure that you leave a comment to let us know that you're here. Not only by leaving a comment, just let us know that you're here, but that helps notify other people that you too are indeed here and that they too should join. So if you can go ahead and leave a comment, that would be super cool. In the meantime, we'll just give us some minutes to get everyone up and running for the big show tonight. And hey, for whatever reason, it's stuck on episode 13. We're actually on episode 15. For episode 15, where the title is The Environmental Punishment Agency. We'll be talking about how that agency is actually violating constitutional law. We'll be taking the pulse of the people. Hey, I don't think everyone in the world is quite watching yet, Lois, but perhaps one day they will. And heck, even if they don't, I'm just satisfied that people like you are in our audience here tonight. That's always good. So, always 100% cool that you guys are here. And we'll again give it another second before we go to Pulse of the People, where we will take your ideas and what it is that you want to discuss politically in our public talk politics page. Always make sure to check that out, facebook.com/talk politics. And that way you can get involved in the conversation. But hey, we'll just kick it off. Welcome to Talk Politics, the only show where you don't just listen to news, but indeed help make it. Thank you to the various people out there who have helped us grow the program. We appreciate your support. We want to thank you, Chris, Monica, Pete, Matthew, Liz, Bill, and Matt, for contributing to the show. And hey, we want to thank you to the viewers and listeners of the show. One way, if you can't make a contribution to help us grow our program through our shot, one way you can help us grow the program is just by commenting, sharing, liking, inviting friends to the individual group. That's a great way to make a contribution. So we would definitely appreciate that. In the meantime, we will turn to our first segment. So our segment structure, we do Pulse the People, then we go to national news and nonsense. And in the meantime, we will, well, I'm with you, Andrew. Hey, I'm trying to fight evil politicians too. That's the whole purpose of the show. Take out the trash and replace it with the good news. Well, hopefully better news. In the meantime, we will kick it over to our first scene, Pulse of the People. So, hey, we're talking about what it is that you guys are talking about in our public talk politics page. If you haven't followed that, make sure to get in there. But you guys are talking about Social Security and basically making no changes to Social Security. I guarantee that benefits are cut by 20%. So we have this fake narrative out there that Republicans are out to destroy Social Security. Well, as it really stands now, Social Security is set to destroy itself. And if we refuse to take action, benefits are going to be cut by 20%. And so I asked, hey, do you guys support doing nothing? And in this post, it reached 170 people. Everybody said, no, we should do something. So it's interesting because all these people right here, including our good friend, yeah, right, Lois, that's 100% true. We need to raise the retirement age. And heck, when it comes to thinking about Social Security, we might even want to, just reiterate or change the term retirement age. Just because the government gives you money at a certain age, that doesn't mean that that's the age that you should retire. That doesn't mean that that's quote unquote retirement age, particularly if you're in a blue collar profession. Think about all the blue collar professionals that could probably work until they're 70 that choose instead to take it easy and coast on taxpayer dollars when they could continue to work and make a contribution to society instead of drawing so much from it in the form of Social Security. Right? And so, yeah, Lois says, don't state cops retire at 45. I don't know if state cops retire at 45, but if they do, I don't support that. I don't think anybody should support people dropping out of the workforce earlier just because the government is giving them money to do so, particularly on the backs of future generations, right? That's a fundamental problem when we talk about Social Security. It doesn't create security at all. Instead, it creates a windfall for older generations to take advantage of a program that will lead our country to the brink of default. To me, that's not security at all. And so people want to do things. Lois suggests raising the age, and I think that's prudent. When Mark mentions what happens to people's SSI when they die before eligible and never collect it, and that's the whole problem with Social Security in the first place. You have people paying into a program and they might not be able to get anything from it anyhow. Why not just mandate, for example, that people have mandatory private savings account where instead of the money being taken to the government and redistributed to people that they like, why not instead just force people to save their own money and then invest it, and then they can do with it what they please. Hey, Sue H is here. Hey, good to hear from you. We're just talking about Social Security. If we don't do anything, well, yeah, Social Security should. I'm only saying mandatory private savings account because if we insist on having a mandatory retirement program for all people, then at least it should be a private savings account. That's it. Now, personally, philosophically, I think that we should be able to opt out, but I don't know if we're there yet. I don't know if as a nation we're ready to go that route. Hopefully, if we start by mandatory private savings account, then we can get people saving and getting people accumulating money without running up debt. And that I think would be a good first start. Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, it's a better option than Social Security. Is it the best option? No, but we're not going to get to the best option of just no government savings program to start with. We're just not. It's probably not going to happen in my lifetime. The other question Lois mentioned that George Bush tried to privatize a tiny portion of Social Security, and the whole GOP threw him under the bus, and that's 100% true. And it just goes to show you, if you're conservative leaning, how much corruption there is even in the Republican Party. These people say that they're fiscal conservatives, that they want less tax and less government, and then when it comes time to enact such policy, they act like cowards and don't actually do anything and just lie about the nature of the program, or they just ignore the problem to start with. And that's part of the reason why this show exists, is because we're here to hold those politicians accountable. They should be able to get away with making a promise and totally doing something else. That's a sham. That's deceitful. And it undermines the trust in our government fundamentally. That's why Congress has such a poor rating, because we have people in there that either lie or don't do what it is that they're supposed to do, right? So that's where it is that we are at. Speaking of where we are, I wanted to ask, Republicans should support student loan forgiveness by taxing universities with large endowments and high default rates. Most people disagreed with this position. You got 9 people who disagreed. We had 7 people who did agree. And actually, it's interesting. Most of the people who did agree are younger people. Everybody, actually, I think everybody in this group that disagreed were probably over the age of 40, but I think it's important to think about, okay, if we're going to go with student loan forgiveness, what could be a way that Republicans could or conservative people could win on the issue in order to provide the public with a real choice? Because right now, younger people are going to vote for any politician that's going to give them free money by supporting student loan forgiveness, and it'll be free money that'll come out of taxpayers. So, and to me, in my perspective, we are going to have student loan forgiveness in some way, shape, or form. And so I think that's inevitable as universities continue to needlessly put people in debt and then raise the cost without any sort of accountability. So I said that Republicans should support student loan forgiveness by taxing universities with large endowments and high default rates. It's these universities that are encouraging kids to support the redistribution of wealth. Why shouldn't they have to pay for it? Right. And the universities that are letting kids attend for a couple of years and then drop out, are they being held accountable? Probably not. But I'm interested in hearing what you guys think in our comment section here. If you're watching, what is it then that you think? Should Republicans support student loan forgiveness by taxing universities with large endowments and high default rates? Or should we just let Democrats have the issue and Democrats will just print more money? I think that's basically the options. Dylan mentioned the concepts of loan forgiveness are so much bigger than the slogan, if you took out a loan, now pay it back. Universities are perpetuating fraud on expectant students by forcing students into federal loans while they continually raise their exorbitantly high cost of attendance. The only solution to fixing this cycle of fraud is going after the source, which are the universities and their endowments. And actually, that's a statement that I agree with. The universities are engaging in fraudulent behavior. If the university lending system was Wells Fargo, well, yeah, right. There's not free money at all, and someone has to pay for it. But universities are giving out loans to kids who don't have any collateral and don't know any better. And then they're not held accountable at all. If somebody defaults on a federal loan, does the university pay? No. Who pays? Taxpayers. So why wouldn't it make sense to hold these universities accountable? It's the government guaranteeing those loans that's the ultimate problem. Well, that's part of it. I don't automatically think that privatizing loans would solve the problem, because if you privatize student loans, but the universities are able to give them away with impunity, and you just punish the person who makes the loans, that doesn't really solve the problem, because 18-year-olds are encouraged to take out thousands of dollars worth of debt. And so you then have a situation where even if those loans are private, you're still having predatory lending. That's fundamentally predatory. And universities should be forced to pay when they give out bad loans. It shouldn't just be on the person. Wells Fargo, when they gave out bad loans, Wells Fargo paid. They paid fines and fees and all this other stuff. Mark mentions education needs to be made more affordable and government needs to get out of it 100%. And Bill mentioned that he agrees, and he just mentioned that he agrees. But I think it's the case that universities are predatory lenders, and whether those loans are private or public, they're still predatory. Giving loans to 18-year-olds that don't have collateral is predatory. No, I don't know if loans should be given on the basis of grades, because most grades are inflated. You have more people getting A's than ever before. So that wouldn't solve the problem. But if a university gives out a bad loan, they need to be held accountable. Wells Fargo's held accountable. Everybody but the university is culpable. In our current system. We blame the federal government, we blame the people that are taking out the loans, but we don't blame the universities. Why? How does that make any sense? Universities are literally teaching kids everything that we don't like, and then they're and then they're basically accountability exempt. Lois mentioned on an unrelated note, someone just texted me a link with Tucker Carlson making a comment on Twitter. And I guess we can go to that, Lois. Well, we'll go to that later on in the show if you stick around for national news nonsense. But right now, we're talking about what you guys are talking about. And that's immigration. And I pointed out the fact that many members of Congress are reluctant to acknowledge. There was a hearing on immigration, I think, some time ago, and I think in that hearing, members of Congress were reluctant to acknowledge the fact that it's Americans who are bringing fentanyl to the U.S. More Americans are bringing drugs into the U.S. from foreign countries than foreigners are. And we always have to have some kind of scapegoat. We always have to have some way to blame other people. All our problems, well, it's Mexico's fault, it's China's fault, it's Russia's fault. The United States our leaders never take accountability for what's going on here and the problems we have here. We always have to blame other people. And to me, that's pathetic. And it often involves blaming immigrants. And that's why I wanted to point out this fact. Immigrants pay comparatively more in taxes, are more likely to start businesses and work jobs that most Americans won't work. We have people that are saying, well, we have to restrict immigrants because they're taking our jobs. Well, I was just at a meeting with the state senator who said it used to be the case that jobs were competitive. Now we can't find anybody to work. And just think about this. If we would allow more legal immigrants, then maybe we wouldn't have the hiring crisis, the workforce problems we have today. But of course, our leaders don't have any foresight, so we just have to propagandize and slander and blame immigrants for our problems, such as life. Bill mentions we need a private company to evaluate the profitability, I think, of universities. And Lois mentions it's true that all levels of government down to school board passing the buck of blame. Mark mentioned about immigrants. It's called the drug war, and it's created way too many jobs. If people are doing their jobs, why do we still have drug problems? That's right. So a lot of the reason why fentanyl is coming in is because we've prohibited other drugs, and fentanyl, because it's so potent, is easier to smuggle into the U.S. So as long as you prohibit drugs, you're going to have these sorts of problems. When if we were smart and we were honest about the problem, we would do more to make drug research more legal so we could engineer safer chemical alternatives to keep people from getting addicted and to keep drugs from crossing the border. Anyhow, though, on the note of immigration, Troy mentioned we aren't restricting any sort of immigration, especially not illegal immigration. That's not true, Troy. Basically, in our current immigration system, at one point it used to be you'd fill out a couple of documents to be able to get your green card. Here, now that has since multiplied tenfold to like 20 pages. So we are restricting legal immigration fundamentally. Andrew mentions that this is the deep state, the government, big banking wants every dime they can get and wants to be able to jackboot you to get it. Same situation with subprime loans. It will never change. The public attitude needs to change. 90% or more do not need a college degree. College education used to be for the upper tier, teacher, scientists, lawyers, physicians, mechanic, welder, plumber, etc. does not need to waste time and money on college. And that's exactly right. We have a government school program that forces people to get degrees that they don't need in order to shackle them with a lifetime of debt while they honestly don't care. So that's the final note, though, on education. Back to immigration. So we are restricting legal immigration for sure. Wanda mentions that we should restrict welfare and disability benefits for able working body people. That's 100% true. Tim mentions legal immigration is the proper method. The influx of illegal immigration is straining the system. Now, I'd be interested in breaking down that problem more. But if we had more legal immigration, we'd have more resources to get rid of illegal immigration, right? And the company that I work for has actually come up with a solution to better help with the illegal immigration problem, where if what we did was we had more regional processing, more immigration processing centers on the actual border, we would be able to identify whom it is that's coming in. If we had a wall, for example, a wall wouldn't be able to identify who is trying to come in and who isn't. But if we had processing centers, we'd be able to identify who's coming in, if it's credible, if they're good or not. And that would seem to be far more sensible. Lois mentioned it's extremely difficult to get here legally, even for professionals. Lots of red tape. So again, it is factually true. We are restricting illegal immigration. And we're restricting legal immigration through this process, have red tape at a time where our economy is hurting. Why, if we were more honest about the problem, you'd bring more illegal immigrants here from more different places based on education and qualifications and credentials. But instead, we can't be honest about the problem. We have to lie about the drug problem, and we have to demonize foreigners, even though they typically pay more taxes and are more likely to start businesses. On the way. Ray mentions, in my view, we should halt all immigration until we manage to control illegal immigration. Well, so Susan mentioned, oh, okay, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But it's not the only way that we're going to control illegal immigration is if we have regional processing centers so we can identify who's really trying to come in. We don't have any way to do that. We have no way of knowing who's trying to come in. And a wall won't let us identify who's trying to come in. Wendy mentions at this point, the country cannot handle legal immigration. Too many have already come through the back door. I understand the sentiment. Yes, too many have come through the back door into California, where to some extent federal funds are being used to give health care to people who came here illegally, which in my mind is unconstitutional and fundamentally illegal. And California should have those funds cut off. But on the other hand, if we let more good people come in, we'd have more resources to stop bad people. Matt mentions don't restrict, or Matt mentioned restrict legal immigration only. Wendy mentioned our country cannot deal with the billions of dollars being spent on illegal aliens. That's largely true. I think we have a better solution, though, by having those processing centers. Tony mentions legal immigrants should not be restricted from entering as long as they come through the door. Right. 100%. Bill mentioned a lot of these migrant workers need government assistance. You can't survive here with $10 an hour. That's largely true, Bill. But a lot of people who come here legally end up living in households with, 3 to 10 other people in those households. So they have plenty of funds, plus they don't have the same amount of debt that they have here. Mark mentioned immigration now is being used for votes in a workforce that will work for nothing. I think there's some truth to that, but it wouldn't have to be that way if we increased legal immigration and let the good people come in more easily. In fact, with our declining birth rates, we're going to need more illegal immigration because immigrants typically have more children anyhow. And so just let me paint a broader picture and let me help kind of you plug immigration into this, right? So we want to restrict trade with all foreign countries because we want America to build more stuff here. The workforce in America has no interest in building anything here, typically speaking, or if they do, it's very specialized items. to have more people work more jobs to build more stuff here, you would need more immigrants to do so, but we've closed the door on that solution. And then on top of that, we're losing money with mass inflation because of the deficit that we keep running up. And then all domestically, all the people who could have more kids or could do better work if they had more money are all shackled to this vast student loan debt. So we're basically closing ourselves down to the rest of the world. And in addition to doing that, we're invading every other country on planet Earth. And then we keep doubling down on those same failed approaches instead of doing more to kickstart our economy, because politicians don't want to explain any of this. They don't want to explain why it's important to have more legal immigration. They don't want to go through the effort of saying why we should trade more with other countries. And they don't want to be honest about how we're dropping the ball here domestically, both in terms of having healthy families and making sure our citizens are happy, because that reflects poorly on them. So they continue to lie and they continue to double down on that. And that's where we are. We should really reconsider our priorities, because we're not going to have a strong workforce. We're not going to be able to make anything here if we don't bring more immigrants in, fundamentally. Kathleen mentioned immigration is going to happen regardless of a restriction law or wall. We are spending more money on keeping people out, and that is not even working very well. Let's spend less money and come up with a plan to ease the immigration process so there are mutual benefits for the country and the immigrants. No, I don't know if I could have said that better myself, but isn't that true? Just think of all the money we've spent to keep people out, and look how well that's worked out. How much more money should we spend to keep people out? When is that going to work? Has anybody done a study on how much we spent to keep people out? Why not spend any more, but make it easier for good people to come in? Well, anyhow, what do you guys think? I'm interested in hearing what it is that you guys are thinking. You guys are providing some great, insightful commentary tonight, but like always, I'm interested. And we have another very great and interesting topic to talk about. Donald Trump doesn't even appear to support Doug Mastriano. The links in comments. Does that change whether or not you will support Doug for Senate? And it's interesting. Yeah, Bill, we do need secure borders, and illegal immigration is breaking the law. But just merely putting a wall up isn't securing our borders, because we need a way to identify who's coming across. If we had those regional processing facilities, we'd know who's coming across. Mark Mitchell, what kind of people marched the long way through? Well, I know that lawlessness is now the narrative, and I think that's part of the problem. People are so focused on the fact that, well, illegal immigrants are breaking the law. Well, yes, right, that's a problem. What are we going to do to solve it? Well, let's build a wall. Okay, great. We built part of a wall. Did it work? No. Do we know if we build the whole wall if that'll stop people? Probably not. Why not have a place to identify these people? It'd be so much more sensible. Mike mentions what kind of people march a long way through Mexico and then steal a car? No, that's a good question. I don't totally know. Now, we had moved on, though, from immigration to Donald Trump and Doug for Senate. I wanted to kind of figure out what it is that you guys thought about Doug for Senate. I have my opinions, but for now, I'm interested in hearing yours. Bill mentions we need all means to keep the law intact. The wall is a deterrent. Well, it's sort of a deterrent, but it hasn't worked that well. I mean, and actually, I'm not. A lot of people mention deterrence, but How well does deterrence work? We tried deterrence in law enforcement. Well, we said, well, if we prosecute people for drug crime and we lock them up and we throw away the key, then no one will do drugs. Nobody's going to do any drugs. Let's just lock them up. That'll stop it. Well, nail them in their tracks. We'll get them. Okay. Why is fentanyl coming across the border? What happened to the war on drugs? If if the war on drugs was so successful, why is fentanyl coming in? Well, why is fentanyl so bad? And moreover, why are Americans bringing fentanyl in? If we already waged this great big war on drugs, right? So, it, Bill mentions as Texas, if the wall is working, that governor is continuing to build the wall. Yeah, and that's Texas's prerogative. And I'm glad that Texas is exercising their sovereignty to continue to do so. But I don't think it's unequivocally clear that it's working, and I don't think it's clear that that's a better solution than having a facility to identify people who are coming here. If we had that facility, we could just as easily deport those people or get them to the place that they need to be. A wall isn't going to identify who's even coming across it. Bill mentions, I like Doug for his culture values, but the majority of the state, in my opinion, has a negative view of him because of the constant barrage of ads demonizing him. Wanda mentions PA needs a conservative candidate that can beat the Democrats. Sean mentioned Trump endorsed horrible candidates like Dr. Oz. I wish more and more candidates would take Doug's lead and be communicating with We the People more. He was talking to us almost daily during the corona lockdowns. Well, that's true. And I'm glad that Doug took the lead in helping people feel safe and secure and helping people feel like they were appreciated and that they were necessary during these horrible lockdowns. But to say that Trump endorsed horrible candidates like Dr. Oz actually polled higher than Doug. So who's the horrible candidate? I'm interested in hearing if somebody polls higher than another candidate, does that make them a better candidate? And you've seen in many state legislative races that Doug was outperformed by many state reps in many different counties. Isn't that weird? Oh, Kathleen mentions the video is gone. Thanks for mentioning that. Weird. All right, well, we're back with the video. Our other commenters mentioned why is there black? Yes, Bill mentioned abortion cannot be the main narrative. I think that's part of Doug's trouble too. Mark mentioned Doug didn't have the support of the Republican Party. Maybe that's true. Did Oz have the support of the Republican Party? Who did who had the support of the Republican Party? I don't think anybody had support in the Republican Party because there was no endorsed candidate. So to just point the finger at the Republican Party, that doesn't explain why he did worse than Dr. Oz. Devin mentions, like Doug, but no one wants to give money for a race. He can't seem to beat Democrats. Rob mentions, hopefully Doug has learned the lesson that he needs to speak with all outlets. Krista mentions, Mastriano definitely has my vote. But it's interesting in this poll. So what this poll with 37 votes, though, reveals is that Trump's endorsement didn't seem to have any power at all. But most people thought that Doug was not a good candidate. Oh, well. So most people thought that Doug was not a good candidate. And a handful of people still insist that Doug was a good candidate. So very, very interesting. Andrew mentioned Doug is one-sided. Can't win. The same with DeSantis. You have to consider the others, the ones conservatives hate. Keep jamming ultra-conservative values over equality, and conservatives will keep losing. That's where Trump shines. Bill mentioned that Trump is not popular in Pennsylvania anymore. So, hey, well, that is that. Yes, there's definitely some problems with the candidates. I'm working to go ahead and get my video restarted for you guys, so it can be on there. But it may be audio only for a while. Thank you guys for listening along. And anyhow, so yeah, the poll shows some people assume Doug's a good candidate. Trump didn't change anybody's mind, but most people assume that Doug is a bad candidate regardless. Kathleen mentioned Doug may be getting bad attention, but like many other candidates, he feels the fire. Regardless of beliefs, if someone cannot maintain composure during campaigning, then how will they handle the stress of the actual position? Excellent point. Yeah, I think you have too many politicians that can't maintain their composure, and that's most definitely a problem. Right. Bill mentions nobody takes into account Philadelphia suburbs or Pittsburgh suburbs also. I think that's true. I think we need to have a better accounting for that in order to be more successful for sure. So yeah, no, that's right, Bill. Yeah, Pittsburgh. Dang, Pittsburgh. So I mentioned that, so I guess it'll be audio only for a while. Thank you guys though for still sticking with me. I mentioned that, Joe Biden put American boots on the ground in Ukraine while also using the FBI to serve as Ukraine's personal anti-corruption unit. Do you support this? And Mark mentioned that the Dems ballot harvested the Republicans. But anyhow, I wanted to ask what people thought about Joe Biden putting boots in the ground in Ukraine. He said that he wouldn't. And he also turned Ukraine into, turned the FBI into Ukraine's personal anti-corruption unit, which is something that most outlets other than this one ignored. That he used the FBI to weed out corruption without, I don't know how that's constitutional. I don't know where that's in the FBI original charter, but that's what Joe Biden did. And there's not a single soul who supports that. Tim mentioned Europe needs to defend themselves. And Wendy mentioned the U.S. needs to mind their own business, 100%. We do need to mind our own business. And it's, it's just so, it just highlights the corruption in our country when we're not really told that the FBI is working to be the corruption unit for Ukraine, and that we actually have soldiers in Ukraine right now. Now, it's not a lot. There's 14 of them. But that's not what Biden said would happen. That's not what he said would happen at all. He said that he wouldn't have any of that at all. That there would be no boots on the ground in Ukraine. And yet here we are with boots on the ground in Ukraine. Now, will he be held accountable for that? Probably not. Is anybody really talking about that? No. Why isn't Fox News, CNN covering the fact that Joe Biden put boots on the ground? He said he would. I don't know. Anyhow, so we mentioned Tucker Carlson on Fox News. That's something that Lois brought up. And I mentioned Tucker Carlson has been released from Fox News. Should others follow him and give up televised news also? The biggest reason why I wanted to ask this question is because so many people are attached to televised news And yet it's televised news that serves as the biggest hub of government propaganda, political propaganda, and just downright dishonesty. See, what we do here is, if you want to see any of the stories that we're talking about, you can ask me for the link. You can go back and look at the story that I was talking about. There's real citations. But on televised news, you get talking heads go on and on and on and on. They don't cite anything. They don't use facts, and they commit what seems to be fraudulent behavior. They look like very, very serious people when in reality they're not serious people at all. Yeah, Mark said, give up news, period, do your own research. Or hey, come to our show, stream it. You see, what never made any sense to me when it came to televised news is why would you watch televised news when you can get on a screen with friends and people you know and talk about what's going on with a higher degree of analytic rigor and more joy and familiarity with talking with your friends than watching the TV? Why would you want somebody on TV to tell you what to think when you can engage in a live conversation with somebody by joining them for a stream? Susan mentioned, should we focus on our own country's problems before we concern ourselves with others? I agree with that 100%. And other people about Tucker, Troy mentioned, why give the American hating left what they want to silent voices from the right? And what I'm trying to point out here is that giving up TV and switching to an alternative wouldn't be caving to the left at all, but it would be empowering content creators, not Washington, D.C. based networks. I mean, isn't that important? Shouldn't we do more to empower and support people who stream and think about things and talk about things than big News Corp in Washington, D.C.? And part of the reason why I say this is because I know for a fact that Rupert Murdoch, for example, the owner of Fox News, the same guy who fired Tucker, he wants to break up big tech so people like me can't stream, so I can't reach anybody. And so more people have to come crawling back to his substandard news. Why? Why should anybody support that? I mean, perhaps it's not substandard. If you guys like it, that's fine. But it just seems like it's a little bit dishonest. It seems like there's more dishonesty on televised news than what you get with streaming. If I, for example, provide some misinformation, you have ways to hold me accountable, right? So that is that. Tim mentioned he never watched Fox News. He's not here to pass judgment. Matt mentioned, to be fair to Fox, Tucker lost them billions of dollars. They're a business, and it is a business decision. JP mentions Fox lost $1 billion due to spreading lies. Tucker was cut because he was apprehensive of fraud and didn't toe the Trump lines. All very interesting thoughts. Hey, I'm interested though in hearing what you guys think. And again, thank you for sticking with me, even though I'm having some video issues here. But should people give up TV news? Most people in this poll, of course, there was only 21 votes. Most people said yes. That's the opinion that I personally hold. Some people said Republicans and conservatives are being censored again. Well, is it censorship to not be on TV? You know, I don't know if we can say that not being on TV is real censorship or not. Just means that we're not on TV. Mark mentioned people watch the national news because they like what they're being told. Oh, that's probably sadly true. Should people like what they're being told based on the actual results? I don't think so. So far, the things we've been told is we can't make any changes to Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. We can't We can't do anything to stop the university system. We have to blame illegal immigrants for America's drug problems. Lois mentioned it's entertainment, not really news anymore. And a Facebook user mentioned, so who do we trust when it comes to news? BBC? Well, I don't think we should trust anybody when it comes to news. I mean, heck, if you had to trust somebody, I think that this would be a suitable enough place. But if you didn't trust me, fine enough. Perhaps you shouldn't. Perhaps you shouldn't even trust me, and you should do as much reading on different news sources as you possibly can. I have my biases and faults and flaws, and maybe I don't do a good enough job of being honest about them. So perhaps we shouldn't. Yeah, perhaps, as Mark says, you should trust yourself. Research, research, research. And at the end of the day, it's our own personal judgment we have to trust. We can pull from other people to get some insight, but to think that we should rely on anybody or just any one source doesn't seem prudent, right? So, and hey, don't make this show a part of what it is that you listen to regularly in order to stir up your own thoughts about what it is that's going on. But don't even rely on this on show. I'm trying to cover things that other outlets don't and won't cover. But that doesn't mean that you should just rely on me. In fact, as I told the audience before, I think each and every one of you should consider starting your own podcast. Try to grow an audience. Try to meet more people, because we need more content creators out there and less pundits. Fundamentally, we don't need people from Washington, D.C. to tell us what to do wearing a suit and tie and all this slick presentation. We need to be listening to our friends and neighbors. But we can't listen to our friends and neighbors if our friends and neighbors don't try to make their voice heard, if they don't participate in the media, if they don't make their own podcast, if they don't make their own show, if they don't do anything. None of that can happen. So it's really up to you guys to do more. It's up to all of us. I guess our last question here on the pulse of the people and what it is that you guys are saying here. The user mentioned it's the way life always was, newspaper, news, and TV. So we need to find better sources, right? I have some friends who stream. I know Andrew Schechter streams. You should listen to his stream. I know that my friend Rob Knorr, a former congressional candidate, streams. Why not listen to those people instead of people from Washington, D.C.? Because at the very least, if you get local or news from somebody that's local and it's wrong, you can say, hey, you lied, you're dishonest, you misled me. You can hold them accountable. Isn't that a greater virtue than just letting some man tell you what to do on TV? I think so. Matt mentions, with Biden now an officially announced candidate, which policy issue should we as Republicans hammer home to win again? And the number one issue at 29 votes is inflation. We have inflation. Our second top vote getter is foreign policy blunders. And really, that's it. One thing that I want to, and then Troy mentioned, we should talk about drug overdoses, lack of border security, violent crime. Steve mentioned criminal enterprise. Cynthia mentioned Dylan Mulvaney. What a joke. Too bad it's not funny. And what I try to suggest is that being tough on crime resonates with Republicans, but it doesn't seem to have an impact on swing voters or Democrats. And so I'm sort of hoping that the GOP retires that issue and focuses on the economy and parents' rights. But perhaps that's asking too much, right? I'm interested in hearing what you guys think about that particular statement. I said being tough on crime resonates with Republicans, but it doesn't seem to have the impact on independents or swing Democrats. I hope the GOP retires that issue, focuses on the economy and parents' rights. And then the tough on crime thing doesn't seem to work. We Republicans trot that issue out every so often. They trot it out with Oz. They did it with Scott Wagner, and I just don't know who that message is really reaching anymore. You know, it worked in what was that famous presidential election where the Willie Horton thing worked out well. I think Lois would probably know if she's listening. But I don't think that works anymore. I don't think people really want to hear tough on crime. To me, tough on crime makes tough criminals even more tough. And that doesn't seem to bode well for the future, right? You know, I think our criminals are already tough enough. Perhaps they're too tough. We need to do more. Huh? Yes, Willie Horton, Lois. There was a big election. Dukakis. I think it was Dukakis who was far ahead in the polls. And then it came out that he released Willie Horton and he lost. Perhaps it was Dukakis, George Bush. Well, Lois mentioned, I think people do want to hear tough on crime in the cities where there is lawlessness and progressive DAs. Well, maybe. But let's say that you're spreading this tough on crime message. Are there Republican messengers in those areas where there is lawlessness to say if you vote Republican that'll stop? Probably not. How many Republicans actually proactively campaign in Philadelphia? I have a good friend who lives in Philadelphia. Here's what he says or has said. My friend has told me that in Philadelphia, what happens is Republicans get bought up by Democrats to run non-competitive races, and that Republicans will make deals with Democrats to not compete that hard. So how are Republicans in Philadelphia going to be in a position to spread that tough on crime message? I don't think that they are. I think it's something that Republicans say to comfort themselves so they can pretend like they're taking action, but are they? And does being tough on crime mean perpetuating the war on drugs that has led to the rise of fentanyl? Because again, the reason why we have fentanyl is because it's the easiest drug for Americans to smuggle across the border. So Mark mentioned, oh yeah, no, I know people aren't happy with the chaos in the cities, but if we don't have anybody, there's not strong Republicans in cities to convince Democrats to vote for Republicans. And so if you keep repeating, and actually Republicans in Pennsylvania tried it. They tried as an election stunt to impeach Larry Krasner. Did that boost Doug's numbers? I mean, what did that do for the party? Impeaching Larry Krasner is a progressive DA. Did the Republican Party get a higher turnout from that? Bill mentioned Republicans are not giving free handouts to city people. Well, Republicans aren't even doing anything in the city, generally speaking, because they get bought out by Democrats. They make deals with Democrats who run non-competitive races. This happens. Republicans are intimidated by the Democrat Party in big cities. They're afraid to go there. And most Republicans are afraid to talk to urban poor people. You know, and that's something that the party, you know, people who are concerned about their party should confront, that they're afraid to talk to urban poor people because they would rather go to country club dinners or do big fundraisers. But I know that that's true fundamentally. So I don't know. I'm not trying to bash anybody or anything like that. I'm just saying, if you want the tough on crime message to spread to the urban areas, who's going to do it? It's not happening. Mark mentions one way to hold Republicans, Democrat accountable as minor parties. Example: Huey Long and Teddy Roosevelt. Oh, sort of. I don't think that the inadequacy of both parties is going to be accomplished until we have open ranked choice primaries. Bill mentioned cities are driving people to the suburbs, bad school taxes through the roof. Cities are for rich and poor. Yeah, but you don't have enough Republicans being effective there, is all I'm trying to say. And then Republicans are afraid. I think so. But hey, that's enough of, well, that's the people's pulse. And actually, the people's pulse is, I guess, better in tune than mine is. I guess that's a controversial point of view that I'm expressing, but I think that that's important. I'm not here to tell you guys what it is that you want to hear, because I don't believe in that. To me, that's dishonest. That's not right. I'm not doing anybody a favor if I just tell you what it is that you want to hear. I mean, hopefully you guys want to hear a thorough analysis with actual reasoning, but if you don't, what can I do? Well, Martin mentioned afraid or in on it. Yeah, right. I think so. I think some Republicans are in on some of the corruption in urban areas sometimes. I think that's true. But anyhow, well, that segment went longer than what I normally anticipated, because you guys provided such great commentary yourselves. But we're going to move on to the next segment: national news and nonsense. So we're back with national news and nonsense. But before we get to that, make sure to check out the store, etsy.com / Lois mentioned, yeah, that's okay. Let's go ahead and cut up. That's the Etsy shop here. You can get mugs, you get some shirts, and what's really most important about contributing through this shop is each time that you contribute through this shop, then that gives me the opportunity to run ads to get more people a part of our broader conversation. And honestly, I don't think that we're going to be able to change our culture until we have more people streaming and more people engaging in a back and forth conversation. We're just not. We're just not. And so any support that you can provide to the stream by getting a commemorative mug helps us reach out to 100 new people that wouldn't have heard about this. So that's why that's so important. So, and thanks to the guys who've already contributed: Pete, Monica, Liz, Chris, so on and so forth. But I wanted to get to what's going on in the college system. And hey, we actually do have good news. Actually, the segment's called National News and Nonsense, but we have good news. Fewer people are going to college. Although, according to some analysts, it's starting to climb up. And that's about, in the past 10 years, 200 colleges have closed down, or 4 times as many in the previous decade. So what we're really seeing here is a flawed system that's being perpetuated, well, through what I would say arguably fraudulent means. We have to go through the K through 12 system, so then we can do another 4 years, so that maybe we can think about doing something that we actually want to do, like make money. And this article points out why going to the college is flawed anyhow. That As he says, most people don't learn anything on campus that helps with their actual jobs. Most people don't learn anything on campus that helps with their actual jobs. And I don't know if you guys have been to a college campus anytime recently, but if you had, you'd see that, well, quite frankly, just most kids aren't interested in learning anything anyhow. And the only value that this sham degree has is it signals that you have the fortitude to make it through a scam called college. And that's how you make more money. Okay. You demonstrate to employers, hey, I went to this 4-year sham and I'm willing to just sit around in class and go through a scam. Isn't that pathetic? The good news is it's going down. But hey, what do you guys think? Should we have more kids going to college? Do you want more colleges, less colleges, fewer colleges, no colleges? Personally, I don't think we should have many. That's just me. That's just me. Well, go through this story. Borrowers with high credit scores are penalized under a new federal mortgage fee plan. You guys probably already heard about that. Kind of crazy to me. If you have good credit, you get penalized and pay more interest. And that's what the Biden administration is in a nutshell. This is a big story, and I think it's, yeah, that's right, Bill. We do need career oriented schools. We used to have that, the land grant colleges here in Pennsylvania, where the land grant colleges were initially focused on training people for some kind of profession or career. But it's just kind of absurd, though, to think that we have to go to universities to be able to have a career to start with. In Germany, for instance, the education system is set up such that probably around 13, you're able to decide what track it is that you'd like to go down. And you can go through college prep, you can go through vocational, you can go through something else, like a hybrid between the two. And kids there, they start out at vocational education at 13, and then by the time they graduate, they make $45,000 plus. Let's bring back the trades. College is often a wasted effort by those who have no idea what they want to do. Susan mentions if you have a degree and apply for a job, they say you're overqualified, even if you can't do the job. What's up with that? Right. Yeah. Seems like a bad deal to me. And actually, I was just talking to people yesterday at Toastmasters about this. They were highlighting their dissatisfaction with the student loans that they took out. And well, universities should be held accountable for that. You know, we're all saying here that we need to focus on career education. Universities have never focused on that, so therefore they ought to be punished for impoverishing their own citizens for no reason at all. This story, though, is about green energy. And so what's really fascinating about this story, it's called Lobbying Turns Green. What's fascinating is that it highlights that for all the Biden administration spending on the green energy are basically the government's handouts to the green energy industry, that's what it is that creates lobbyists. So people say that they hate lobbyists stink, they're special interest, which I'm actually a lobbyist. My special interest is in the well-being of taxpayers, unlike these guys. But at the same time, they'll turn around and support Biden's Inflation Reduction Act, which gives out free money to green energy producers. And that free money enables those green energy producers to say, you know what we need to hire more lobbyists so we can beg the government for another handout. Okay. So in other words, not only does something like the Inflation Reduction Act, not only does that squander our money and lead to higher interest rates, but in addition to that, it basically expands the number of people lobbying for big government because it gives those companies more money and more incentives to lobby for big government. Isn't that interesting? And that's an angle that people don't talk about either. It's one of the reasons why I really wanted to highlight this story, is because the Inflation Reduction Act should be the lobbyist, the what, the increased lobbyist act, where we're just going to give away more money so green energy can afford to hire more lobbyists. Bill mentioned Shapiro says you don't need college for state jobs if you are qualified for the position. Susan mentions back to my previous comment about parents also being penalized for sending their kids to college. Cost us $40,000 for $20,000. Right. Big shame. And the people should be refunded for the deceptive practices that the universities has engaged in. 200 colleges closed down in 2 years. A lot more would close down. And really, perhaps they should, if they were held accountable. We we have to hold these university systems accountable. Goodness knows that if we perpetuated fraud to the extent that the university system does, that with all these new IRS agents, we'd be held accountable. You know that. and that's true, because they wanted to amend the bill. I think it was the same Inflation Reduction Act. They wanted to amend the bill to stop the IRS from going after small businesses, and they said no. So it's rules for thee, but not for thee, or rules for thee, but not for me. There are people using systems off grid paid by themselves. Why pay big electric companies to run the power? Create your own power. No, for sure. I guess I'll just cover this briefly. So it's kind of crazy that this story isn't receiving much coverage at all. Perhaps that's intentional. But what we have is congressional Republicans engaged in a battle between the Senate and Joe Biden, where these Republicans say, hey, we've reached our debt limit. Our nation has a debt limit. We've reached that limit. And because we reached that limit, we should reduce spending so we don't go over the limit again. Seems sensible enough, right? Well, McCarthy apparently is having some trouble in locking down votes for cutting government spending. Surprise, surprise. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. You guys should all be trying to follow that. I don't think either side apparently wants to talk about it, but it's worth talking about. The EPA, the good old Environmental Punishment Agency, wants to regulate carbon emission illegally. Mark mentions we need diversity in education, but yes, there needs to be a precedent step for sure. So the EPA said that it couldn't regulate power plant emissions in a Supreme Court case. Right here. Wow. You can't do that, Environmental Punishment Agency. Well, guess what? The Biden agenda says, well, we're going to do that anyways. We're going to make sure that coal producing gas power plants have to cut their greenhouse gas emissions by 2040. So we're going to mandate that we're just going to close down coal because we don't like it. We don't like coal workers. We all need to be on we all need to worship trees and convert to green energy. And I think that's something that we should all be concerned with, because Joe Biden, basically the first term of Joe Biden and Obama, or heck, Joe Biden now makes Obama look moderate, was he tried to use the EPA to do the same thing. Those things didn't work. He used the EPA to penalize farmers for having puddles of water, and it's the same playbook. So we have this thing called Environmental Protection Agency, which is really just punishing the middle class, and they are doing so illegally once again. So hey, keep that on your radar. You know, when people talk about politics, what's going on, but make sure to follow the Environmental Punishment Agency to see how you're going to be fined or feed or feed. What fines and fees you're going to have to pay. And we did cover the debt limit proposal. It's a modest plan, cut off 6% off 10-year spending, limits discretionary spending, cuts back Biden spending plans, gets rid of bureaucracy, has work requirements. So congratulations, Republicans, for once again supporting work requirements. If Joe Biden was anything like Bill Clinton, he would at least agree with that portion. Of course, he's not. So that's important to note. I guess I got a couple other stories here. It's kind of like we don't need a pipeline to produce our own fuel, but we should rely on other countries. Right. That's the absurdity. That's the fundamental absurdity. So I guess I'll go to these last two stories here. I have probably too many, and I went over time here. We'll cover TikTok. So TikTok threatens free speech, and so we have states across the nation that want to ban TikTok because politicians have said, well, TikTok comes from China. China's evil, so therefore we have to ban TikTok. But most of the narrative around this just isn't true. There is no evidence, zero evidence that TikTok is spying for the CCP. Now, it does demonstrate misuse of customer data. That's a problem. But the Chinese, the Communist Party, if they wanted to, could buy customer data right now. So, you know, you can say that they can get it from TikTok, but they could also just buy it too. And yet people aren't saying, well, we should stop China from buying people's data. They're only focused on this, predictably. Other countries have found themselves in a similar situation, yada, yada, yada. China's NIL will be used. The concern that China's NIL will be used to access American TikTok users' data directly implicates America's place in the global order it has created. So yeah, you know, we basically have banning TikTok will do little to curtail Chinese access to Americans' data. Absent limits on domestic data collection and resale. that doesn't all that would do. So if we ban TikTok, then Chinese apps would just be required to buy Americans' data on the open market, just like other people already do. Or they can just steal data, like what they did with 22 million federal employee background checks. Of course, yeah, black market's open 24/7, right? So this is something that anybody should be talking about. Why? What did the federal government do when 145 million Americans' data was stolen in the 2017 Equifax hack? See, they don't want to talk about that because they don't want to admit that they're incompetent. 145 million Americans' data was already stolen back in 2017. Well, so we can't admit that that's a problem, but we have to create all these fake fears and say that China is going to steal our data when they already did before. Wow. Right. So it's something worth noting. There is a bill out there called the Restrict Act that would basically give the federal government more power to spy on you. So hey, that's that. Interesting hearing what you guys think. Should we ban TikTok, or what is it that we should do? Now, I think a lot of people that want to ban TikTok don't use TikTok, but I think if I think if it was said that, like, for example, if the government said, well, let's ban Facebook, so that way the handful of people that listen to Talk Politics can't do it anymore. You guys would probably say no. Kathleen mentions if people don't want China to have our info, then don't download the app. What happens if we ban TikTok? Then in a few months there's another popular new app. Maybe we as a country should focus on issues rather than creating fake attention-seeking headlines. Right. Yeah, I mean, this banning TikTok's fake news. And your politicians, again, one thing, if you get anything from the show, it should be that politicians look to scapegoat anybody or anything that they can, and because they don't want to be held accountable for their own failure. And more often than not, it's foreigners that are blamed. We have to blame Russia. We have to blame China. We have to blame Mexico. When can we blame ourselves? When can we blame our leadership? Why can't we just say, hey, we messed up. Our country's been messing up for years. Maybe we should do something differently. Yeah, Mark mentioned you can't ban your way out of stupidity. What's next after TikTok? Correct. Kathleen mentioned people writing the article upset that our teenagers are making more off the app than they ever will. Right. So we have people saying, well, you know what, teenagers, you're disgusting, you're lazy, you don't do anything, you're sloppy. But then when teenagers make a ton of money on TikTok, whoa, that's not real work. Why don't you go to the coal mine? Why don't you do real work? Why don't you do anything? It's like, well, you guys are putting kids in a lose-lose circumstance. They're adapting to new ways to making money using social media. You don't like that. And then at the same time, you want to complain that they're lazy. Bill mentioned half the people in this country are in another world. They have no interest but themselves. Well, I think it's good to have an interest in yourself, but at the same time, if you have an interest in yourself, you need to be honest with yourself and the people around you. I'm interested in promoting this show. I want everybody, as many people as possible, to listen to the show. But that doesn't mean when I screw up that I blame the Chinese government, like when my camera went off. Just imagine if I said, oh, well, my camera's off, the Chinese are in here again. Wouldn't that be stupid? Wouldn't that just, and wouldn't that be pathetic and juvenile for me to blame the Chinese for something like that? It's the same thing that's happening now. Oh, TikTok, we're getting invaded by the Chinese through TikTok. Well, we were invaded in 2017 with the Equifax hack. Did anybody really care then? Now? No. Does anybody remember that 145 million people's data was stored in 2017? No. that never happened. People don't remember that at all. But moreover, we should ask this. Let's say that the Chinese know that I watch 100 cat videos a day on TikTok, and they know that I'm doing it from my apartment. So what? What are they going to do? Send me more cat videos? I'm already watching cat videos. Are they going to come get me? So what? It makes no sense. So, hey, thanks to the new people that's just joining. We're just talking about the foolhardy nature of a TikTok ban, and the pathetic justification that it should be banned. Because again, 145 million Americans' data was stolen in 2017. Nobody cared then. Do we have a solution to that problem? Did your politician call you and tell you what happened after that? No. Hey, Katrina mentioned that kids are utilizing what is available to them. If the people want change, they need to create a different platform of accessibility, or government promotes these acts. Yeah, right. Well, but not only that, Katrina, if people are concerned that kids are using TikTok and that the Chinese government can do something to kids, why not just follow this thing called personal responsibility and just not use the app? Yeah, I mean, you have it's really fascinating to me. You have some Republicans that say we believe in personal responsibility, but we have to ban TikTok. Right. Okay. Right. That makes a lot of sense. Instead of just going back to responsible parenting, let's ban TikTok. Yeah, that'll change the world. That'll make everybody safe. Well, I'll be able to sing "Kumbaya" in a big drum circle. Yeah. Okay. So that's just highlighting the hijinks of that. Another thing I wanted to cover, and I think is important, and hey, it pertains to this is a public article shared by Brian Hooks, chairman and CEO of Stand Together. Brian Hooks, Brian Hooks is yeah, I already mentioned it. Brian Hooks is the CEO of Stand Together. Stand Together, forgive me for taking some time to get over that. Stand Together is the parent company to Americans for Prosperity, Concerned Veterans for America, and Libra. And what he's trying to do is say, hey, if we have actual principles, then we may be able to solve the big problems in our country. Because at this point in time, it's questionable as to whether or not either party is totally operating from a principled perspective in solving any problems. Instead, they're demagoguing us about TikTok. And so he just mentions that freedom, free markets, rule of law, spontaneous order, limited government, individual liberty. These are the list of principles that our organization believes in. We created a big mural to showcase that, and these are the things that we've always believed in. This is what our organization believes in: freedom, free markets, rule of law, spontaneous order, limited government, and individual liberty. That's what we've always stood for. It's what we will always stand for. And some people have suggested that the organization has drifted away from these fundamental principles. So, in a piece published in the American Mind, it claims that Stand Together has veered away from the principles that motivated Charles Koch to found this community. Well, it's not true. And well, we'll get back to that, but we'll go to the comment here left from Kathleen. Kathleen mentions the young creators on the app have to create a platform and run with it in order to gain popularity. They need to use creativity. Maybe some politicians should take pointers from them. Yeah, that's exactly right, Kathleen. So this is regarding the TikTok. Politicians are set, and I was trying to pull up this article, I think last week or two, Kathleen, and say that Republicans want to ban TikTok because they don't have any followers on TikTok. There's one popular Democrat politician who has a ton of followers. Then I think the next is Bernie Sanders and John Fetterman. So you have to question the motive for the TikTok ban. Is it really because the CCP is there, or is it because, well, we can try to kneecap Bernie Sanders? So perhaps. But Kathleen also brings up an even bigger point: is that kids are being entrepreneurial on things like TikTok, and some people want to take that away from them. Why? Just because being an entrepreneur now means doing stuff on TikTok, that doesn't mean you're not being an entrepreneur, or you're not headed in the direction of being a business owner, right? And that's substantial. We should be able to understand and appreciate that as substantial. Back though to the American Mind, that about Stand Together and how the American Mind says that Stand Together has gotten away from key principles, that we don't use the same word that we use, that there's less of an emphasis on freedom and limited government, and that Stand Together is focusing on empowerment and addressing injustice. Well, it's Bill mentions we don't want China running our American social media. Well, Bill, it's not the case though that China is. ByteDance is not, that's not the CCP. It's just not. And there's no evidence that, hey, Mark says got to run. Hey, good to see you, Mark. We'll see you next week. But yeah, it's not the case that China is running our social media. But heck, it's not even the case that politicians want Americans running American social media anyhow. They also want to break up Facebook. Okay, so we have to break up Facebook, we have to break up Twitter, and we have to break up TikTok. Why? Because Democrats have success in using that platform, and instead of beating Democrats with a better campaign or better ideas, we're just going to take away people's freedom. I don't know. Does that sound noble to you, Bill? Doesn't seem that noble to me. And heck, it really just doesn't even seem honest. It's not honest. Again, in 2017, Equifax leaked 145 million people's data. Did anybody care then? No. Did politicians care then? No. But now they care about TikTok. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I believe that one. So, you have some commentators saying that, well, Stand Together isn't focused on freedom or limited government, and instead we're focused on empowerment and addressing injustice, and that's not true. We are sticking with our principles. The author claims we were afraid to condemn violence that came from protests in 2020. It's not true. We did condemn violence. He said that that Stand Together and Americans for Prosperity supports critical race theory, saying that we don't believe in individual liberty because we support critical race theory. It's not true. We just don't think that it should be banned because we believe in free speech. Stand Together and Americans for Prosperity believes in free speech. So we're not for banning anything, categorically. And that has nothing to do with being left-wingers or not. We don't believe in banning things. Holy heck. Why? Because most of those bans don't work, and it just gives power to bureaucrats. Anyhow, in addition to that, that article says that, well, Stand Together and AFP is hiding things and doing stuff for PR, and yet Stand Together and I think Americans for Prosperity Foundation won the most important free speech and donor privacy case in the last 10 years. So, we've been guided by our principles. I would encourage you guys, if you have a minute, to really read this and see it, just to see what it is that we have always supported. And this article concludes, though this particular opinion piece is confused and inaccurate, I'm grateful to the author for the opportunity to force us to clear up any general questions about our work. Stand Together is dedicated to realizing a society of equal rights and mutual benefit that enables people to realize their full potential. And we do that through principles like free speech. And we believe we should partner with anybody to do good. Even if those people don't share our exact beliefs, if they want to do good, we will partner with them. And we are motivated by a deep belief in people's ability to discover and bring about new and better ways for people to live together in peace and prosperity through principles. Now, I don't know if that sounds that left-wing to you, but to me, I'm not hearing a lot of progressives or communist socialists saying that they have fundamental principles that they believe in, like freedom, free markets, rule of law, spontaneous or limited government. And it's just so frustrating because, well, it's just frustrating that Stand Together and Americans for Prosperity is regularly slandered by people that don't understand and don't even attempt to understand what it is that we're really working towards. We're working towards a world of dignity, openness, mutual benefit, equal rights, and free expressions. Couldn't be controversial, right? Anyhow, that's all we got for tonight's show. Thank you all so much for tuning in for an extra hour and a half. I know that it was a lot. Make sure to support the show we'll be back 8:30, but also make sure to support the show by going to etsy.com/shop/talking politics. There you can show your support for us with the purchase of a mug, shirt, whatever that allows us to reach even more people and engage even more people in meaningful conversation ways that TV couldn't. And that's all we have. Until next time, we'll see y'all next week at 8:30. Hope you have a great day, and hey, make sure to keep talking politics.